Elon Musk paid $0 in federal income in 2018. Jeff Bezos paid $0 in both 2007 and in 2011. Warren Buffett has historically paid less income tax than his secretary and the people who work for him. So today, let's talk about the buy, borrow, die strategy. And once you understand it, you're never going to look at wealth or income taxes the same way ever again. I'm Alice. I'm an accountant. I used to work in corporate finance. And back in the day, I did a lot of work in the private equity and asset management space. And I've personally seen firsthand how the ultra wealthy deploys their own capital and how they minimize their tax obligations. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and join my newsletter if you want to hear more regular insights from me on all things stock market, business, and finance. There's a company out there called Propublica. They are a nonprofit organization and they do something called investigative journalism. And they basically post their findings out for the public. So Propublica obtained actual IRS data on the 25 wealthiest Americans, and what they found was really shocking because between 2014 and 2018, those 25 wealthiest Americans grew their wealth by $401 billion. And what they paid in taxes was $13.6 billion. 13.6 divided by 401, that is basically a true tax rate or an effective tax rate of 3.4%. And this is all legal and compliance.
Elon Musk pledges his shares and borrows billions, tens of billions of dollars. Carl Icahn borrows billions of dollars. Larry Ellison had a $10 billion credit line. What's happening when they borrow is that they're not selling, they're not taking gains, they're not paying any taxes, and they're living lavishly.
So I'm going to break down exactly how each step works, the real numbers behind it, whether regular people like you and I can use any version of this for ourselves, and what the controversial parts around buy, borrow, die actually are. So let's get into it. So the entire tax strategy is basically built on one principle that a lot of people actually don't really realize about the US tax system. And that is the US taxes people based on their income, not their wealth, not their assets, on their income. So on assets, an individual taxpayer basically only pays tax when they realize a gain. And in order to realize a gain, you must sell the asset. So if you never sell the asset, you will never pay taxes. But this can be really, really powerful. If we take a look at ProPublica's analysis, in 2021 alone, Elon Musk's net worth went up by approximately $121 billion. So that's an additional $121 billion in additional wealth or new wealth that has been created in one single year. But how much income tax did he actually owe on that? Zero, because it was all unrealized gains in Tesla stock. So Tesla stock went up, he didn't sell. And so this $121 billion basically never hits his tax return. ProPublica has also reported that between 2006 and 2018, Warren Buffett himself reported $24 billion in income and paid $23 million in taxes. So that's a real tax rate of just 0.1%, not 10%, not 1%, 0.1%. If you think about it, the average firefighter or teacher in America, if they make $50,000 a year, they're paying basically an effective tax rate that's closer to 20%. This is something to really think about, especially if you're a high earner or you're a high net worth. Now, when you're trying to build wealth and you're thinking about taxes, the goal isn't just to earn income. The goal is to accumulate assets that appreciate in value. Income is the most heavily taxed form of wealth creation, whereas asset appreciation is the least taxed. So people that are high net worth or ultra high net worth have figured this out a long time ago and have been taking advantage of this system. So buy, borrow, die is based on this entire premise. Accumulate assets that go up in value, never sell, and find other ways to access the value that they have actually created. And here's exactly how. So step one of buy, borrow, die is to buy. And it's the most simple one of all of them, but basically it's the foundation that basically creates and allows for people to save a lot of money on taxes. If you think about the ultra rich, they buy assets or they focus on thinking about how they can buy assets that will go up in value without generating taxable incomes. So what does this actually mean? It means that they use their money to buy stocks, they use their money to buy real estate, it could be private businesses. It's not so much about the specific asset that matters, it's more about the principle and the way of thinking, that the goal is to accumulate things that increase in value while generating you as little taxable income, unnecessary taxable income at least. So an example of a very specific vehicle would be concentrated stock positions in companies that these individuals have either founded and gotten founder shares of, or they have a lot of control over. So this is like Jeff Bezos with Amazon, Mark Zuckerberg with Meta. Real estate portfolios also at the same time can generate a lot of depreciation deductions that offset income, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail. And then also private equity stakes that can grow in private businesses without distributing a ton of taxable income in that growth period. In real estate, there's a very specific tax strategy called real estate professional status, which basically allows people who actually work in real estate to offset losses against business income or even employment income. And there's something called cost segregation, which basically allows real estate investors to break down the piece of real estate they own into different components. So this could be things like leasehold improvements, floors, furniture, and basically look at each of those components and depreciate them separately. And the whole idea is that by looking at each component separately, this can save you more on taxes than looking at a building singularly. Buildings usually have a useful life of 27 to 39 years, depending on whether it's residential or commercial. Land can never be depreciated, but basically with this depreciation rule, it allows, again, real estate investors to take a paper write-off against their rental income that they earn on the properties, all while where the actual asset, building plus the land, is going up in value. And basically this depreciation allows them to cut down their tax liability or what they owe on taxes on the income. And again, this is something that the IRS allows investors to do. And the reason why it's called buy, borrow, die is because the buy step is all about building that massive balance sheet with minimal tax liability. And then once you have that, step 2 becomes available to you. Let's talk about step 2, borrow. This is where people who have all these assets basically create a tax-free ATM for themselves. And this step kind of exploits a gap in the tax code that's, again, legal, but it's also the core reason why the ultra tax are able to pay very little in taxes. So the idea is that when somebody borrows money through a loan, that loan does not create any taxable event to you. So when you borrow money, you don't pay any tax on it. And the IRS does not consider loan money to be income to you because you have an obligation to pay it back. So whether you owe your credit card company $1,000 or you are borrowing $1 billion against your stock portfolio, the premise is still true. You don't pay tax on borrowed money. So instead of selling appreciated assets, which then triggers capital gains tax, rich people will borrow against their assets. So their assets still stay in place, still have the room to appreciate, and the loan proceeds are again tax-free. So at a very simple level, this could be an individual that's trading on a margin in a brokerage account, self-directed. At a more sophisticated level, banks can call this something like a securities-based line of credit or securities-backed loan. So a lot of banks will offer their wealthier clients, or basically people who have this amount in assets, to borrow against their own assets at a very, very low interest rate. So if somebody had $10 million in appreciated stock and for whatever reason, they need a liquidity event or they want some liquidity and they decided to sell $1 million of that 10 million, they would be subject to 20% capital gains tax. So immediately just by accessing their own money, $1 million out of $10 million, they would owe or have to write a check to the IRS for 180 grand. The other option is, in order to get access to that $1 million, that person would borrow $1 million against their portfolio at today's interest rate of 4%. So in that scenario, the annual cost to you to service the debt is $1 million times 4% or $40,000. So between paying capital gains tax of 180 grand to paying interest of $40,000, the difference is 140 grand. And that's just today's cost. When you sell stock, there's also the opportunity cost that you're basically cutting off that stock from being able to grow, right? Because you're basically saying, hey, I want to sell the stock and take the money out. But when you borrow against it, that $10 million portfolio still continues to grow. So there's also future opportunity cost to consider as well, on top of the immediate cash savings of $140,000. So Propublica has reported that Elon Musk himself pledged approximately $57 billion worth of Tesla shares as collateral for personal loans. And he used that money to basically fund his next business venture, including buying Twitter without having to sell a single Tesla share and triggering that capital gains event for himself.
Think about how much of Elon Musk's net worth is Tesla holdings that are collateralized so that he can borrow, right? He's always joked about being cash poor. And so he's borrowed from the banks against the value of that Tesla stock to make things happen for himself. And he's kind of doing the same with this deal.
So the borrow step in buy, borrow, die basically allows people to turn their asset base into tax-free source of liquidity. So that's how people like yourself and I can access the value of your wealth without triggering any taxable event. So you pay interest instead of taxes. And because your assets continue to grow while you do this, the math will almost always work in your favor. So the step that makes things permanent of buy, borrow, die, and the final step is basically what turns this whole tax deferral system into tax elimination. And that is when you pass away. So when a person passes away, the assets that they own basically get passed down to their estate. And this is where the tax code does something very unique. It actually resets the cost basis of those assets to the current market value. This is also known as a step up. So let's give you guys an example. If you had bought Amazon stock in 1997 for $1 a share, today it's worth $200. Let's just make this really simple and ignore stock splits and all that stuff. So your unrealized gain is $199 per share. If you sold the stock in your lifetime while you're still alive, you would have to pay capital gains on that $199. But if you held that stock until you passed away, basically your estate or whoever you designate is going to inherit that money, would inherit the stock at $200 or the current market value on the date that you pass away. So that $199 of gain that you had accrued in your lifetime basically disappears, and the IRS actually never collects a penny on it. When you pass away, your estate also assumes your debts as well. So the loans that you borrowed from step 2 would also pass off to your estate, and your estate would take some of the inherited assets to repay those debts. So basically, any beneficiaries of your estate would inherit the remaining assets at the stepped up basis of $200, and they would owe no money in capital gains on decades of appreciation. Even though I am a CPA, I want to be really clear and disclose that I'm not giving any sort of individual tax or legal advice. This area of law can be very, very convoluted, and if this is something that you or someone you know is personally dealing with, they have to speak with a lawyer or a tax accountant to get proper individualized advice. Now, Propublica actually did an estimate that all of this step-up basis costs for people who pass away estimates to about $40 to $50 billion a year in foregone tax revenue to the government. And that's, again, $40 to $50 billion in taxes that would be owed if that provision didn't exist. Warren Buffett has actually publicly said that he plans to hold his Berkshire Hathaway shares until he passes away. And so he's basically sitting on tens of billions of dollars of unrealized gains. Basically, that means that whoever is the beneficiary to his estate would not assume that tax liability themselves. So, in summary, buy appreciating assets, borrow against them tax-free, pass away with those assets intact. Your children, your heirs, the beneficiary to your estates, whoever you designate that, can basically inherit that on a stepped up basis. Those loans get repaid by your estate. The IRS never collects capital gains on that money. So that is basically buy, borrow, die. So throughout this video, I used a lot of examples of very wealthy people, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, and you're probably asking yourself, is this something that I can do as well? And the answer is yes. It's just that the full strategy at the scale that the ultra rich use, it requires a lot of assets, right? But the principles are basically scalable to anyone. And there's basically a version of each step available to anyone. So as an individual taxpayer, you have access to a Roth IRA, which I would highly recommend everyone set up for themselves, for their kids. Your money basically can grow completely tax-free in this account. And any withdrawals that you make in retirement are tax-free as well. So it is legal tax elimination that anyone can have access to.
Used a Roth IRA to shelter billions from taxes. The report saying Thiel grew his IRA from $1,700 in 1999 to $5 billion in 2019.
So I would recommend contributing to it every single year, maxing it out, and have that as a part of your personal finance and retirement strategy. The generally accepted advice around investing is to hold low-cost index funds for the long term. And when you do this, you basically unlock market returns without having to check the stock market every single day. But the thing is that if you were to hold this in, let's say, a taxable brokerage account, every time you sell, you then trigger a taxable event. But if you held for decades without touching it or selling, then you're basically deferring those taxes indefinitely, which is basically what you'd be doing in the buy step anyways. If you really do need to access your own money for liquidity purposes and you're not able to borrow against that money, what you can do is you can sell strategically in your lower income years to minimize your effective tax rate. Now, you might not have the real estate portfolio of somebody who is a billionaire, but that doesn't mean that you can't get access to real estate depreciation. If you own rental property, you can depreciate part of that property against your income. And it's the same principle, again, that the ultra rich use, just at a bigger scale. These are things that I do for myself. These are things that my clients do, and I would recommend my clients. And those are the basic principles of maximizing your tax advantage accounts, making sure you get all the depreciation and tax benefits available if you own property. Again, all of these principles are very identical, and the tax code, if you see it this way, can actually reward you for patience and reward you for asset accumulation at every level of wealth. Because the reality is that people who are really, really rich don't have access to anything extremely different or secretive than you. They just know the rules really, really well, or they can afford to hire people who know the rules really, really well. And the one thing they do have is the know-how and the strategy to accumulate those assets in the first place. But again, it all comes down to the idea that we are trying to chase assets rather than chase income, at least from a tax perspective. If you guys like this video today, you're gonna love my next video on why the stock market refuses to crash. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until next time.